Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Village Trustees regular meeting, it being June 11th at now 6 o'clock in the Rockingham Town Hall Lower Theater. Before we open, I'd like to notice the winning track team member, Jacob Howarth. If you could stand up so everybody can see you. The camera will catch you too. Good. Thank you for all your efforts. You and the rest of the team was great. You won the championship, that's correct, right? Yeah, that's all the noises going on. Thank you so much for coming to our meeting.
There may be another one?
Is there another member?
I didn't win, but I'm on the track team.
That's all right.
Okay, additions to the agenda for routine administrative matters and or pressing matters that will require ratification at a future meeting.
I don't have
Everything. I would like to add a second executive session concerning contractual agreements after the grievance appeal we have here already. Let me see. Approved minutes of May 28th, 2019.
So approve?
Seconded.
Okay. Any conversation? No discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion's approved. Passed. Minutes are passed. Public comment on items not on the agenda. Anyone? Yes, and please say your name so the recording secretary
My
can take it.
name is Jessica Lake, and I am here on behalf of James Rugerrio. He just wants to extend a thank you to everything that the town did for the recycled percussion event. It was such a short notice thing, and you guys put your time and effort and energy, and it means so much to us.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Hearing nothing further, we move on to the manager's report. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Mitchell. I simply didn't, I scanned the room, didn't see your hand.
I wanted to clarify something that I thought I heard when you were discussing your last trustees meeting. You were complimenting people on audience participation and that you wanted more. And then I thought I heard somebody suggesting that they felt uncomfortable with a couple of people that were asking hard questions about the police department budget, and that they felt uncomfortable with it and they wanted a signal from the manager. If they had to reply to questions about a $1.3 million police budget. Did I misunderstand that?
Are you talking about our last regular meeting?
Yes, I watched it on TV. For a while you were blacked out, but then it came on.
It was referring to at the meeting.
At the meeting.
Jakes had said
Okay.
he would rather.
Oh, I see. Typically, the public comment is given to the to open up areas of questions, but it isn't necessarily a matter that each individual trustee could answer on the spur of the moment. It would be something for a reference to the manager to look into or for further discussion, but it isn't necessarily going to be answered at the meeting per se, depending on the topic, of course.
I just, seeing as Paul and I are the only two people that ever questioned the budget, I felt like we were being singled out for coming to a meeting that you want people to come to and participate in, but you do want to hear from us.
Oh, no.
Oh.
That certainly was not meant to be the case.
Because if we have to wait for a signal, I've got one too. And you won't like it, but that's okay. That's my point.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing no other hands, manager's report, please.
Okay, thank you. And yeah, feel free to, I was just gonna say thank you for everything. I mean, thank you for being here. Obviously, you have the hardest job of all. But I do appreciate everyone on staff, and all 4 fire departments came together. It was, crazy short notice, but I couldn't go, unfortunately, but it looks like everyone had a wonderful time, and it was a wonderful tribute.
Yes, it was.
Anything else we can
All
do?
the community's doing everything possible. I mean, that's what it takes, it's community.
Yeah, just get
A lot
through
of
this.
things. And if there's anything else down the road with parks and other things that I would like to definitely extend my gratitude for everything.
And if we can help you, please
Please
reach
call
out.
us, yeah.
Sorry for the lost one.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
And I was going to say congratulations to the boys and girls track teams. That's a wonderful achievement. Congratulations. And thanks a lot for being here. You don't need to stay for the whole meeting, although you're welcome to. Now to the more mundane stuff, but important. We signed the contract for the Mill Street wastewater project yesterday. That work will begin June 17th with substantial completion August 15th, so that's a pretty quick project, 60 days. When you arrived today, we were finishing up the meeting with the property owners on the Burt Blake project. And that's obviously a more complicated project in terms of impacts to number of owners. That contract is going to get signed next Friday. We're waiting on the final paperwork from the contractor. The work will begin in mid-July. Hopefully they'll finish up before the winter. There's a chance they'll need to take a winter break, but we're going to do everything we can to make that not happen. Most of the questions the property owners had concerned schedule, how we'll tie in with driveways, and how to get their own sewer service, because the village is responsible for the service from the main to the property line, and then the owners are responsible from the property line to the house. We will have curb stops at the property line, which is just going to be a huge improvement for everyone. So even if they don't improve their service now, it'll be easier to improve their service later. But it definitely makes sense to do it now if they're at all interested. This is both town and village. We are ready, we believe, for alumni weekend. That we know how to do it, doing it for many years. So everything should be looking good and ready for that event. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Okay, great. And now the first thing on the agenda is the nuisance ordinance presentation, Bonnie North and Miles Nichols. And I will scoot over.
Can you see?
Yeah.
Can you see? Okay.
Yeah. Not a,
To be back here by the side.
get you over here.
My phone, well,
Just a small screen.
is my head gonna be in the way of your?
I guess the first thing I would like to say before we even begin, this is not the new ordinance. This is a draft of a proposal. It's a long way from being an official ordinance. We've been working on it for a long time. We were asked to do this by the select board because it was felt that we needed something to address things that we didn't have any tools to address. So we worked on this and we created this draft. And we're just showing you tonight what we've been working on, what we've come up with. Has a long way to go before it's going to become a legal ordinance. And Miles can tell you a little bit about what we've been doing the last 8 months.
Yeah, so the select board asked the planning commission to start moving on an ordinance that would expand the village's existing ordinances that cover mostly public property and acts from individuals in town. We didn't really have a lot of coverage for private property, and there's been a lot of gaps that we found over the years. From my personal experience as a trustee formerly, that there's just a lot of properties that we haven't been able to act on in good enough time before it's too late. And so that's what this is about. We've consulted a lot of people about this. There was a work group formed from the Planning Commission, myself, Bonnie North, Deb Wright. We met for about 8 months weekly, and we consulted people from the development director to fire chief, chief of police, Officer Paulette, attorneys Masuko and Nkuda, and a licensed structural engineer, as well as the town listers.
So why do we need a new ordinance? I was gonna explain what we currently have in Bellows Falls.
Yeah, so like I said, we have these ordinances in place, offenses against persons and property, the life safety codes, and the unsafe building ordinance, but they mostly cover things that are either active health risks, or they're mostly concerned with public property and individuals. We didn't have much that would go, and Saxons River and Greater Rockingham have none as well. And so what this really needs to do is address citizen concerns that the town and villages are currently lacking the authority to address, and prevent a great deal of cost to the taxpayers.
What's a typical example of something we can't really address with our present ordinance, which, by the way, is only Bellows Falls, not Saxons River and not Greater Rockingham, would be the second story porch completely packed with garbage that smells and is obviously a detriment to the surrounding neighbors. Unless this is spilling over onto the street and can be verified as a public health safety issue, there's nothing that we can do about that. And we need to expand the enforcement. Right now, the Bellows Falls Police are the only ones that can go and follow through on a complaint. And they really have more important things to do. We want to create what we call safety officers in the zoning department, the health department, and the fire department to assist with this sort of investigation and enforcement. We need to hopefully find a way to address repeated drug trafficking in a certain property. This is touchy. We're well aware that it's touchy. This is going to require some intensive citizen dialogue. Down in Brattleboro, people got so frustrated that nothing was being done with a building where there were definitely people selling drugs that they spray painted the side of the house. The owner of this building also owns at least one building in Bellows Falls. And we want to avoid the cost of demolitions. If a property can be identified as being in trouble in various ways, before it gets to the point where the owner completely walks away and abandons it, and then it takes us months or years to take control of that property, and then finally just tear it down at the cost of tens of thousands of dollars, and we're left with nothing but a vacant lot. If we can identify properties that are falling into extreme disrepair earlier, maybe we can assist the property owner, or maybe we can encourage the property owner somehow through our enforcement.
It's important to remember, these ordinances, this will not solve a lot of the problem properties that we're familiar with, but this is all about preventative and getting voluntary compliance so that we can stop these properties from backsliding. And part of that is getting complaints to be processed efficiently. And so this is going to be standardized across all the different departments of police, fire, health, zoning, water, and sewer. It was really eye-opening. The Planning Commission met with Officer Paulette, and we went through the whole process of what it takes to write a ticket under the current village ordinances. The problem has to be identified, then the officer has to return all the way back to the station. They have to flip through the binder, which in many cases hasn't been updated in a long time. The village is currently rewriting them, but you have to flip through this binder. It's not very intuitive. You have to find the right codes, and then you have to figure out what the fee is, and it takes a long time to write up a formal ticket that will actually stand up in court.
And we also want to help out the staff that has to go and conduct an inspection. Right now, one officer goes. We want to have two at all times, and that accomplishes three different things. One, you have a buddy with you. You don't know what you're walking into. An unsafe building, you might fall through the floor. Drug house, someone could be in there with guns, who knows? different things like that. And then another thing that we want, the number 2 thing, is to have 2 perspectives on the violation. This can help cut down on what a lot of people are frightened of, which is an overzealous officer coming down a little too hard on somebody, maybe, you know, making an interpretation of the ordinance that's a little rough on people. If you have 2, you have differing perspectives. They have to agree when they write up the ticket. And the third is if the violation is appealed and you wind up in court, this can devolve into a typical he said, she said, he said kind of thing. The defendant can say, I never did that, and our officer could say, well, yeah, you did. If we have 2, you have a collaborating buddy there to help tell the court what actually occurred. So, the ordinance, and I would recommend that everybody read it, just like the infamous Mueller report. It's a good idea to read it before you build an opinion, especially before you get fired up with your opinion. And you can call the zoning office and talk to Joan Harlow. She will email you or snail mail you through the US Post a copy of it on rockinghamplanning.org, which is the Planning Commission's website. Right on the home page, there will be a link where you can download a PDF of the ordinance, and also there is Joni's phone number right on there. You can call her, you can email her. Please read it. Don't go by what you read in the newspaper. Read it yourself, and it's a little bit tedious, you know, kind of reading the language, but it's important to really know what it actually says, not what somebody told you it said. So one of the categories is a nuisance on private property. And somebody said, you're gonna get a ticket for having dandelions on your lawn. Well, no. This is the kind of thing we're trying to address. Debatable, is this a real public health hazard? Maybe not, maybe not. But it certainly is going to affect your property values if you live next door. Blighted structures. Typical complaints, as you see, it's a building that's just been left go to pot, basically. The owner stopped caring for it for whatever reason. And eventually, this becomes the town's problem, and it's very, very costly.
And I think it's important that example on Green Street, if this ordinance had been in place, that property would never have gone into those hands. It was a problem property long before it fell into the final owner, before it caught fire, and before we were left to clean up the mess at considerable expense.
Yeah, just a little part. When I was still living in Maryland in 2008, I saw that property advertised online. I thought it looked cute. When I got up here in 2009, I immediately went to see it. I couldn't believe it. The foundation had a crack this wide, zigzagging through it. Oh my God. Years later, someone else bought it and couldn't do anything with it, and we had to tear it down.
Bonnie, it should be noted that Gary's in the photo works hard.
Yeah, there is. That was fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, there
You
was a
enjoyed
ball.
that sort of thing, I know. So, I mean, he'll have to sacrifice if we get this ordinance passed. He won't have that kind of fun. And then, of course, we have structurally unsound buildings that sit for years and years, and we have nothing to address that with in the present ordinance. And vacant structures and vacant property. Again, it's an example of the property owner just letting it go. And eventually the town has to take over. The town has to demolish it. And we lose something that could be on the grand list, and now it's just an empty lot. And this one gets everybody upset. Overgrown weeds and grass. I'd like to point out to everybody that's watching and everybody that's here, what we're proposing is actually a little more lenient than what we currently have in Bellows Falls and have had for a long time. The only thing that happens under this ordinance is that it now applies to Saxton's River as well, where they have nothing in the way of an ordinance. Ours is a little more lenient. We make an actual exception for someone who's growing vegetables or has tall plantings that are part of a landscaping scheme. We're trying to address this sort of thing, which mostly happens with bank-owned properties. And that's pretty much exactly what it says in the Bellows Falls ordinance that's been in place for a long time.
And so, with the goal of this whole nuisance ordinance is that it's meant to be, again, the phrase is voluntary compliance. It's supposed to be slow, deliberative, thoughtful. Some people will say it's too slow, but we needed to come up with a comfortable balance. Since we are touching on private property, it has to allow the property owner every opportunity to comply and to have a conversation started.
So here's the process. A legitimate concern triggers an inspection. Legitimate concern. It doesn't mean that if you're angry because someone painted their shutters fuchsia, that's not a legitimate concern. Safety officers make every effort to secure voluntary compliance. When all efforts of voluntary compliance have been exhausted, then comes a written notice of a violation. And the owner has 7 to 30 days to respond with correction, or, and this is important, with a plan for correction. You don't have to be able to correct it in 7 days, or even 30 days. But you have to have a plan, and you have to be willing to work with us. Let's say there's 4 feet of snow on the ground, and your roof needs repairing. Well, we can understand that. Let's make a plan, and we'll check in on the plan and make sure it's moving along. So it's not like anybody's going to get kicked out of their home in 30 days. The goal is voluntary compliance. And Chuck made up this flow chart.
And the beauty of it is that you can really see that everything in the green rectangle, that is everything that happens before the notice is issued, before that 7-day deadline, 7 to 30 day deadline starts. There's all of this conversation, there's all of this opportunity to just get it done without having to get too legal. The fee structure. Again, no fees are charged about frivolous complaints, those fuchsia shutters. No fee for inspection of weeds and grass, ever. The basic, it's $100 for a residential inspection fee, $250 for the commercial properties, and this is something that's been lacking, if it's decided that it's necessary, costs for an official engineer's report will fall back on the property owner. The town and village have been picking up these costs.
Now you can appeal it. All right, once a violation order has been issued, and that only happens after all that voluntary compliance has gone nowhere, right? You have 15 days to appeal it. And depending upon where this violation occurred, either the Rockingham Select Board, the Bellows Falls Trustees, or the Saxton's River Trustees will hear the appeal. This keeps the appeal process more localized, so that Rockingham isn't bossing around Bellows Falls and Saxton's River, which some people might not be too happy about. This keeps it localized. Your own trustees in Bellows Falls will hear the appeal, and the trustees of Saxton's River will hear the appeal. The enforcement will be on hold while the appeal process is going on. The hearing date for the appeal will be within 30 days of the receipt of the appeal. So it's a month and a half there. The appropriate board can overturn the violation completely, or they can modify the penalties. So again, this is a democratic process. In the end, you're before your elected people. Here's the penalties. Why don't you explain for us, Mark?
Sure. And the fees and fines will be allocated to the applicable village or town. So again, that stays within local concerns. Nuisance on a private property, and these are minimum maximum, $25 to $100. Blighted is $50 to $100. An unsafe building is $50 to $100. Vacant property structures, $50 to $100. Unkempt weeds and grass, $15 to $50. And the important thing is that each calendar day that the violation continues, and that's after all of the appeal process and everything has been done, every day it continues, unaddressed, it'll constitute a separate violation. And that means that the fees will add up very quickly, and that gives this ordinance the teeth that I think a lot of us residents have been looking for.
And remember what I said about a plan. If you have a plan, you are under voluntary compliance, right? So if you have a plan and you're working with us and there is a plan, you're not gonna be fined $100 a day because this hasn't been fixed yet. It's important to know. Suppose someone just can't fix it, right? All right, there are a number of things available, and one of them is a reverse mortgage. We are not saying you must go get a reverse mortgage. It's simply a tool that's available to anybody over the age of 62, I think, or 65, a senior citizen, if it's appropriate for you. I actually have one on my house. It worked for me. It may not work for everyone. We are going to be working, Wendy and I, very hard to develop a real comprehensive program to help property owners who cannot address the concerns financially. One sort of a catch-22 is some of these federal grants, they won't be available, we can't apply for them until we have an ordinance like this. That's catch-22, they call that, right? But there are other things that we can do. There's tax abatements. We can set up, we can try and get something going where local contractors might work at a reduced rate or pro bono. And there's also the option of having offenders who need community hours come and do some kinds of work. That's been done before. So there's a lot of options, and we're going to be working on it. I've got several calls into the Economic Development Director of St. Johnsbury, where they have a comprehensive program and a revolving loan and a grant program for homeowners, because they have an ordinance very much like this one. And we're going to see how they got that to work, and hopefully they can give us some good advice. And Wyndham and Windsor Housing, they have a program. This is, I think, a low-cost loan program, which again, might not work for everyone. Some people don't have enough income to even get a low-cost loan. But they can be, this is in place right now. You can call them right now. And like I said, we're going to be working on this. We don't want to create hardship for anyone. We're not trying to punish anyone, and we're not trying to make hardship for anyone. And the Planning Commission didn't just sit there and say, we're going to do this. No, we were asked to do this. And we responded, and we've given it a really good shot. It will probably change here and there, be adjusted in some ways. We're going to give it several months. We're going to have big community meetings. It has to be approved by Rockingham, Saxons River, and Bellows Falls. It won't be a legal ordinance for quite some time. And once it's finalized, the Planning Commission will monitor the implementation and recommend changes as they seem necessary. If there's a problem, if it's not working the way we wanted it to, and we'll present an annual report to the town and the villages. And this is what we want to do. This is the whole point. So does anybody have any questions quickly? Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I thought of actually tying in the banks, or to let them take a little responsibility. Before they go, you know, if they get a foreclosed home, before they can sell it to the next person, maybe they have to, the house has to pass an inspection, or you don't allow them to move ahead selling it, or there's agreement that they're gonna fix the siding, fix the roof, before it goes to the next person. But I'm seeing that the banks are all in it for the money, and they don't care if they're switching apartment house for apartment house, as long as they get their mortgage money.
Well, if the bank is the property owner, they're the property owner.
Yeah,
And the ordinance fines and everything will go on the bank.
Yeah, no,
Whoever
I
owns
would,
the
because my
property.
mortgage is strictly written that I actually have to maintain my house to a certain
Right.
degree within the 25 years of the mortgage.
Right.
Or the bank could say, you know what, you don't get your home equity loan.
Well, if a bank forecloses and the bank owns it, the bank is the property owner.
Okay.
They are the ones that will be given a violation.
Okay.
Okay. All right, well, thank you all very much. I'll try to go through this kind of quickly. I know you have a big agenda tonight. Please go to rockinghamplanning.org. You can download the full ordinance, and I really recommend that everybody read it. Probably going to try to set up some kind of a blog there on that web address so that citizens can maybe get off of Facebook and talk to each other there. All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Deborah, I'd just like to thank Bonnie and Miles and yourself for all the work you've put in and other people have put in. I think this is a great step forward, and we'll be watching as in the weeks and months to come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else? All right, thank you, really, for your
All
time.
right.
Twice.
Thank you. Thank us.
Yes, yes, thank ourselves. Let's see, I think we are moving on to the second item, which is consideration of contract for sewer manhole, sewer line replacement at Atkinson and School Street.
Right, and this is a project that Rob will be able to speak to. You'll recall we had the break last year, and so that we put a temporary fix in, and this will be a more permanent fix. We just received the bids today. Yesterday, sorry. Yesterday.
So, yeah, we did a little bit of history. I don't know if you all have a paper. I believe it was passed out. Gives you a little bit of history of the Atkinson School Street sewer. There's a sinkhole there last year. We did some exploratory. Found out that was an issue with the sewer manhole there. Did some temporary because it was beyond the town's scope of work. So we put together a bid package. Went out to bid to, I believe it was 10 people. We got 2 responses. And the recommendation here is to go with knots for a lump sum to do the work. You can see that in that handout.
Okay, then I'm going to go ahead and...
It is higher than what we expected.
Yes.
What we-
It is, and we're gonna supply the material to do the work.
At the 5.
What's that?
It's gonna cost us the
Yes, the
5.
cost of
Okay.
that is an estimate.
Okay.
Until we get into it, we really
When
don't
did
know.
this happen? When did this happen? It was,
It's been a sinkhole off and on, and then it was last fall before winter that we got into it and looked
Just
at
after
it.
school started, I think.
Yeah, something, I don't remember the actual date, but it's been going on, so we dug down as far as we could and figured out what it was. And I just think that the structure, and looking at it in the camera, is you got a structure down there that has the old catch basin lines coming into it, you've got 3 sewer lines coming into it, so there's like 4 or 5 pipes there. There's pipes leaving that have been plugged off that go to the storm drain, that, you know, they only plug them off at the end, so there's still a whole pipe of open space. And we just, because when they did the stormwater separation back in the day, is they don't, they cap the pipe off at each end and they don't pull out the section in the middle. So there's potential for a void because it could be clay pipe, and that's what it is. And I think that's what it is the fines are going around it, and that's why the sinkhole keeps coming back. So this is to take that out and put in a new structure, dig it down and do it right, get rid of as much as a cap off the old stuff that's there in the ground.
did we budget this for our next fiscal year? Did we
Well,
budget this work?
We had budget in this fiscal year. We have under contract work, and I think that was just a carryover from the previous year, just because we'd have unknown projects that come up like this. So it's really not, and next year's budget was more budget for Cherry Hill. So this is,
Are
it's
you
a
going to be
common.
able to do this in June, or?
That's the thing is, we're gonna try to get it done now and after, next week or whatever, but it's up to the contractor. He's the same contractor that's doing the Mill Street project that's starting next week. So I don't know what his schedule, because we haven't approved it yet, so he doesn't have it on his books to do it. So the potential is to do it by July 1st, but if it doesn't, it's gonna have to go into next year. And then, of course, with the enterprise fund, the money still is in the fund.
But if we contract for it this year, if your question is what budget year will it go in versus when will it actually be done, we can charge it to this year's budget if we have a contract for this year that's executed this year.
So I have a question about the last paragraph. It says 25,000 is remaining in the FY20. Did you mean FY19?
Yes.
You meant, and also the negative balance would only be $1,000, wouldn't it? Because you're talking a lump sum of 26?
26, but we got the 5 for supplies,
Okay.
because we're supplying that.
Okay,
So
so that's
total
what I
of
said.
31,
So-
which is a paragraph
But it is
above
this
that.
year's
Yes.
budget, okay.
And some of those supplies we already have.
I have some
It's just-
supplies, that just figuring
It's
out
appropriate to charge it to this
Yeah.
project.
just to replace that, because I keep supplies on hand.
Okay.
So it's not cash out. but
Right, it's
it's a
more
real
pipe and
cost.
fittings that I have, but not necessarily that. More for the bypass, but this is gonna be a different style, different type of pipe that we carry stock in.
You guys have any questions?
I'm really disappointed we didn't talk about this at the last meeting with Cherry Hill. Cherry Hill was an elective upgrade for $40,000, and this is a necessary upgrade for the tune of $32,000, $31,000. So, do you not understand my concern here?
Yeah, I don't know if I would see Cherry Hill as elective, but
Well,
you could
it's-
speak to that.
Well,
I mean-
Cherry Hill, I mean, it's anytime you open up a street, I mean, it's like what we're doing with Burke and Blake Street, is you wanna look at everything that's in the street and fix what you can while you're there, because when you leave that street, you shouldn't have to go back to it for a long time. Cherry Hill's that prime example. They're gonna replace that wall.
Hopefully not. We just did Hadley Street, and there's now a fresh patch from a
And
break there.
you're gonna get that, because you're gonna
But-
get that
but-
stuff that's in the ground we don't know of. I mean,
I
they
understand.
leave water mains, once they replace the water main, they leave the old one there.
Right, but there's
Sewer
no.
line, we can't. We gotta follow the old sewer line, so we take it
Am I
out.
correct in saying that the sewer line on Cherry Hill at this point does not need to be replaced?
I just, probably not, but the thing is the condition of it is clay. It's a clay pipe. So if you get near or next to clay and you disturb, you may not be near it, but then you do compaction next to it with a big vibratory roller, when they do the thing, it could
I
damage the
understand.
pipe at that point. So I mean,
I'm
it's
just thinking more fiscally. We just approved a $40,000 loan, or not a loan, but a $40,000 line item for replacing a sewer main that doesn't need to, that you just said. At this point,
At
doesn't
this
need.
point, it doesn't need it,
Please.
no, but
No.
it's working.
Right, doesn't need to be done. However, then the next one, you're now asking for $31,000 to do something that we knew about last fall and didn't plan for, and that needs to be done. This needs to be fixed. Or can we just say, this doesn't need to happen,
No,
we don't have?
This has to be fixed.
So do you understand my disappointment
No, I-
there
I
fiscally with
understand, but I-
budgeting and how this goes on? And we're trying our best to bring the ratepayers some equity in what's going on. And it's just piling on with expenses.
I understand. I think the sequence of it could have been better to have this one before before Cherry Hill. I
We
think
realize
Cherry Hill
this
had
is
other
necessary
deadlines, but and Everett's not here to speak to
Right,
that.
exactly.
But yeah, the sequence of it would have been better because we knew when this failed last year that it would need to be
Yep.
done. I think they're both they both need to be done.
Can we
The-
afford it both? I mean, the problem is, we are at this point leveraged. I mean, the water, I mean, am I wrong, or are we not in a negative financial situation with both of our enterprise
Well,
funds?
wastewater is in a better position because we raised the rates. And we anticipate that we're on a good path now. And neither one of these is so significant that it will get us off of that path. I mean, the 25,000, that's a normal amount to spend, I presume, in a year for repair.
You just, I
But
don't,
that
you just
completely
don't
takes
know
care-
what your repairs are gonna happen next year. I mean, we've got $40,000 in the budget for next year.
This is,
But we may have another sinkhole developed
Right.
at the corner of Henry Street in Atchison that we might have to do the same thing to. I can't
exactly,
anticipate stuff like that.
exactly what my point is
So,
about planning these and how we're financing this, how we are giving some equality to the ratepayer for this.
I would just add, I don't believe that either enterprise fund is in fiscally bad shape. I think the process by which we added, and I know this board, except for Stefan, really wasn't here, but it's us anyway. It's collectively the board. What we didn't anticipate, or what wasn't anticipated for our citizenry, is the magnitude of the projects that had been approved by the citizenry.
I completely agree.
And we found
the tax
ourselves,
implications
we
that-
found ourselves in a position where we had inadequate rate structure to support the work that was done. So I think that that has created a need for revenue that wasn't properly anticipated or communicated.
I
But I
completely
do
agree.
think the underlying integrity of the enterprise funds is there.
So long as we keep raising rates for the taxpayers. I mean,
Well,
this
I
all
think-
goes, this
I
all
think-
goes to the ratepayer. The integrity of the fund is fine as long as the ratepayers keep being burdened.
Unfortunately,
more.
that is correct.
So in addressing the equality for the ratepayer again, where do we start drawing the line fiscally and management-wise to make these decisions? I was against Cherry Hill. That is a town project. The sewer main is adequate and serviceable.
it's working at this point, but
Right.
like I
It's
said, when
adequate
they
and
go in there
serviceable.
and do their job, but the other thing too is if we went in after they did the wall and did the sewer line, it's gonna cost a lot more than what they're doing now.
Because you tear the road open again.
You gotta pave it.
Yeah.
So part of that cost is covered on the project.
Well, at this point,
You know,
I
it's a
believe
shared
our
expense
motion
as far
was
as I
that
know.
not to.
We don't have a
not to-
motion.
No. The motion from Cherry Hill.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, was that we didn't want the money spent if there was no reason to do the repair. If when opening the road, the pipe does not get broken or interrupted, we would prefer that the money did not get spent, and then the ratepayer would see the benefit of us being conservative.
I
And if we don't have any
If we're able to do
control
that,
over.
we'll do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But we don't have any control over the highway
And-
department when that
Exactly.
gets done.
Which is why,
No, look, it's a
Well, whoever's
contractor.
the
Yeah,
contractor.
exactly.
which
We
is
don't-
why I also asked that we have someone assigned for responsibility for making that call.
Right.
Well, you mentioned earlier, when they compact and go over with a roller, I mean, it could all be all sealed up and how long, and that crack may not show up for however long.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, we had, for example, at 7-Eleven,
Right.
Yep.
where the service was through the pipe, it was all spider crap. I mean, and you just didn't want to even look at it because you're afraid it was just going to crumble because it's clay tile. So it's the same thing. You've got spider cracks that may show up. I mean, clay tile is a great pipe as long as it's put in well and put in the proper soil, but it doesn't take much to disturb it once it has a crack there. And you may not see the crack.
I think 7-Eleven is a perfect example
Yeah.
that you can, it's a tangible example you can see, and I won't even dare ask how much it's cost them.
So getting us back on, I'd like to
I
get us
think
back
Gary-
on track.
Gary
This,
had a question.
we could go on and on talking about Cherry Hill, but the reality is, this is the item that we need to address today, and it does need to be done. So
Very
that's,
good.
although
What
you
was about the
we can
Cherry
dispute the
Hill?
order,
It's not very accessible.
we
the
still need,
sewer
this
line,
needs to
correct?
get completed.
It's at, what's at the bottom is, and you climb the hill, and at the other end of the thing, there is no manhole, kind of ends. So, it's, like I said, though, it's one of those things that, if I know the town's paving a road, I go in and look at the sewer line and see what the condition is of it.
Oh, exactly.
If we're doing work in this, in just to see where we're at with it. It just makes sense if they're gonna go down and box the road out to replace the road and pave it, look at, you're only gonna go down and save money by doing a sewer line. We did it on West Street years ago. That was just a great example. We'd found the sewer line, we found a manhole in the middle of the road that we didn't even know was there. You know, so there's, I've been here a while, but I still don't know where everything is in the streets and stuff, so. It's just nice that when you do open up a street is to look at stuff and if it needs a repair it. But obviously, if it doesn't, then
Don't do it,
let's
yeah.
not do it, you know?
Yes.
May I just add another just issue that's gonna come up? I don't know when, it's really unforeseeable, but Atkinson, 7-Eleven, that pipe was 13 feet 9 inches
Yeah,
down.
to the top of the pipe.
To the top of the pipe. And thank goodness we didn't have to pay for that repair, because it's tens of thousands of dollars. But the scary part is gonna be when a private property owner of a home, who can't afford that, you know, a not corporate owner has that kind of situation where they're facing that kind of cost. I mean, that's really an equity issue. So that's something we've started thinking about how we could address that. So, yeah, there's a lot to be figured out.
Mr. Probably Jake's first, thank you.
I'll make the motion
Okay.
to accept the Knott's excavating lump sum bid of $26,000 for the repairs of the sewer line at Atkinson and School Street.
Okay, second? Did anyone second?
Do we have to add in the?
Do we have to add in a
5,000
contingency,
for a
5,000
total of
or
31?
6,000?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so, because our
Okay.
contract is with Knott's and the 5,000 is internal.
Okay,
So we need a second for that?
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Mr. Reese?
Yeah, the only thing I want to say, I thank you guys for getting the sewer, the water department, everything in-house, the money you needed to do the repairs. But also, I appreciate John's comment of when you got 2 pages of delinquent water bills, you're putting property up for sale, you have gone to the same payers over and over where now they have no money. You got the money, it shifted the monopoly. You gotta get somebody else into this community to pick up the tabs, or you are gonna end up putting more properties up for sale. That's just my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Reese. I mean, I certainly agree that delinquent issues, especially if it's something that can be collected, we should do that, because that only adds to our ability to pay. Anyone else with further comments on the motion? All right. Keeping the motion in mind, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Those opposed? All right. All right, the motion does carry and is passed, and we do have Knott's.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Moving on to the West Street update. Ron Lake. Chief Lake.
Right, and this item was asked to be on the agenda in response to emails that have been received from residents concerned about,
Properties on the street.
right. So we won't be discussing specific properties.
The Bellows Falls Police Department has answered 16 calls on West Street in the last 12 months. With help and cooperation from the people making the complaints, we can make arrests. We do everything we can with the investigations we have in place. It takes a village to make everything work, and we need your help when we get a call or a complaint. That's about all that I can tell you about West Street. But we work very hard. We have answered every call that we've received, and we're tending to business.
My understanding is not property specific, but there are other areas beyond what the police can, your scope, that involve health, animal control, other types of things like that. So this is a multi-level, multifaceted issue on that street, and hopefully both town and village departments will be able to handle what's going on. Were there comments from anyone on my board before I get to you, Mr. Good? No? Yes, Chuck?
Just a comment about West Street and just an example of what's been happening lately. Police reaching out to health office proactively and bringing us on early. We've had it's been a huge change in probably the last year or two, where now I'm working very closely with the officers. We're all different tools, so I can't speak to any criminal matters. I wouldn't even know if they were happening right in front of me. But I do have my building inspector hat on and health officer hat. So there's been a lot. This is one example of many recently that We're brought on early in the process, usually when the officers are on site. They tell me to stop what I'm doing, come on down and visit. So this has been an example of what is working in my mind.
Mr. Pugnano?
No, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't see it.
So I was discussing that street and some stuff with some residents earlier. Is there currently a noise ordinance in the village?
We do have a noise ordinance in the village. It's between 7 and 10, 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. Regular amounts of noise are allowed. There are certain levels at which they can call the police department and have that dealt with. I don't know whether you're talking about car noise or just screaming and yelling or...
So after 10, they break, I don't know what the level of noise is. How does one determine that?
Unreasonable.
So what happens to that person? Should I ask?
I suppose
What happens to that
Chief
person?
could respond.
11:30, neighbors, nice night, they're trying to sleep with their windows open, unruly neighbors are intoxicated and extremely loud.
Unreasonable noise, determined to be, and a person is complaining about it. We wouldn't issue an ordinance violation ticket. We would issue a state statute, disorderly conduct. They'd get an invitation to go to court, but they'd get the opportunity first to turn the music off or down.
Let's say it happens every night, and they've been warned, and it continues to happen.
Well, they would end up with a citation in hand, to end up in court if there was something every night.
7 to 10 is the time?
10 o'clock at night is the cutoff.
Same on
Where the
Saturday.
the noise has to be, if it's unreasonable noise, 10 o'clock at night is the cutoff time.
Were any of those 16 calls that type of incident?
Yes.
Were they issued a citation?
No. Didn't meet the criteria.
Okay.
Jakes?
Yeah, I was going to say, is 16 calls a typical experience for a household in Bellows Falls?
Well, West Street has 10 homes on it. I'm not
This
isolating.
is the street.
The street, West Street.
Okay.
There's 10 homes on West Street, and we answered 16 calls on West Street.
Over a year.
And over a
Over a year,
12-month
in
period.
All right, also, one of the issues that I had anticipated that neighbors would show, but I have not seen, did not come to the meeting, although I let them know that it was going on, so they could have the discussion here if they wanted to. But there is an issue of livestock. We have, that has come up in the village over the years. We had the house that had cows on it, but a number of the neighbors in the village have chickens and other types of small livestock and that sort of thing. We don't have an ordinance to prevent that, so everyone should be aware livestock is allowed within the village limits of Bellows Falls, and they have to maintain a certain level of health. The health officer would be want to go out and check on that if there was a report of negligence of any type. Other than that, does anyone have anything else to say on this matter? Mr. Mitchell.
I want to get old. Can someone tell me where West Street is? Because several of us trying to figure it out, we couldn't remember.
It's up off of Old Terrace. There's West Street and Center Street.
And West Street.
Yeah.
It's by the cemetery.
It's by that's right, the cemetery. Yep.
Now, in that same vein, when you're talking about West Street, let's also look at the halfway houses. I happen to know for an absolute fact the Bellows Falls Police are regulars at 21 Henry Street. You know, how many times have they been there? I bet it's more than 12 in a year. Right? These nonprofits, a lot of these nonprofit houses generate a tremendous amount of your police calls, because I listen intently.
Standing, but that, of course, that is not the matter we're talking about this evening.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Reese?
Yeah, one thing I talked to my neighbor about, and me and Ron kind of talked about too, those that continue to use the police department over and over, you know, if you use it more than 3 times or whatever a year, you should be charged. And I was told that in Randolph, some of the police departments now are charging. If it's all medical HERS, can you bill the insurance company? I do think we gotta work together and give Ron some help to clean up all these little, like, nonsense type calls.
Now, you've come to quite a few meetings since
Yeah.
your retirement. We have had that discussion in the end, towards the end of last year, and it come up a couple of years prior to that, as to whether or not we thought nuisance homes that were getting a lot of calls should be charged for the amount of services that they are using in our village on
Yeah.
resources. It
That's why
didn't
I
get
wanted to-
anywhere.
That's why I wanted to graph it, so we can,
Yeah.
as a community, start seeing what's going up, what's going down, where the problems are.
And we didn't at the time get a report from the police
Yeah.
chief that warranted, nor the Bellows Falls Fire Department chief, that warranted the need, as in some communities like Randolph, to do that sort of thing with the concentration of the people in our village.
That's not my recollection.
You don't recall that?
No,
Well, yeah, but it didn't go anywhere.
My recollection is that there are properties that have repeated visits
Mhm.
from the police, and that the idea of coming up with a fee structure, it's a touchy issue, because on the one hand, you don't want to discourage people from phoning the police, but then again, you have problems that need to be addressed. So it's a touchy issue, but to my understanding, it was kind of tabled because Wendy wanted to do this
Oh, you mean the
landlord,
tenant.
tenant type of work committee or whatever that would, in addition to other things, address this issue, or attempt to, or begin to address this issue. So I think we're kind of waiting on that program
Yes.
to move forward. We haven't had any reports on that, so.
I'm sorry, did you?
Yeah, so what are we talking, like if there's repeated police responses and stuff like that?
Yeah, like we talked about
Yeah.
last year.
That's sort of a gray area in my opinion. And the reason I have that opinion is because one of the elements is an individual or a complainant or whoever can repetitively, or people on the street, for example, can call the police with a complaint that they saw something or, this is going on. But then you get the element of a lot of people don't want to get involved, don't want to give a sworn written statement, don't want to do an affidavit. So, what's an officer or law enforcement to do for enforcement? And if people, won't follow through with a complaint.
First and foremost, we have to respond to that call and
Right.
answer it.
Right.
Then we find out we don't have the cooperation.
Yeah.
Therein lies the problem.
Yeah.
Maybe the nuisance ordinance will help answer your question.
That should be some of that. Yes, Wendy?
It is in the nuisance ordinance. It is
Yeah.
proposed. There's an
So
item.
it would be a
for-
piece that we could
Yeah, more than
address.
6 calls.
Well, I think it's really disturbing to hear from residents about a neighborhood problem that is just, very difficult to
deal with.
live by.
I know.
And, I feel badly about it, but I guess we're doing what we can under the rules and laws and regulations
That
that
we
we
currently
have.
have. Yes,
So, anyway, hopefully that will,
So you would encourage people to say yes to the nuisance ordinance? It's hard.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, I'm very much in favor of the nuisance ordinance.
Anyone else? All right, it looks like we've completed that, and you're following up on your piece.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, thank you very
all
much.
very much.
And we do appreciate, want to make sure people understand, we do appreciate your feedback and you're trying to get in touch with us to look at issues like that. And the nuisance ordinance, the draft proposal, is one as a result of the types of things that we are talking about this evening. So we do respond and we do appreciate your input. Thank you. Moving on, we go to discuss the process to change the annual meeting date.
Yes, and the board asked for information on what that process would be. You're interested in changing the annual meeting date to a date earlier in the year. And it is in the village charter that the annual meeting is on the 3rd Tuesday in May. So to make a charter change, that does need to be adopted by the state
Legislature.
legislature. So it would be possible to get it adopted in the next session, but it would take a lot of work and a lot of pushing. So the earliest it would be in effect would be in 2021. So that's the report.
And it wasn't just about changing it to an earlier part of the year per se necessarily, but maybe another day of the week.
Well, yeah, it was
In either case, any
Well,
of that,
either way,
any
since
change
it
of any
says
kind is going to result in the
third
same
Tuesday.
process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could change the time, but the date and the month is set.
So what is the
The
board's
day.
pleasure about that then? Do you want to go forward and start the process of looking at, well, I mean, of the process of changing the date or the day of this? What do you
I
think?
would be interested in opening this dialogue with the community and seeing what feedback, I mean, we've gotten some feedback in informal manners, not as a discussed topic, but I would be interested in seeing what we get for feedback as a discussed topic about changing and what, where, not only where in the month it is, but what month, what date, what time. If we're going to change it, if we're going to make a change anyways, because it's going to take a couple of years for us to
Right.
be able to go through this process to get it done. Let's put some thought into it and get some feedback so that we make a change that's positive for the community, that is going to allow it to be attended by more residents, so that we can have an active community in our local municipal government.
What's that?
Public vote.
Public vote?
Yeah.
I believe that, yes, it would also require a public vote, I believe. Yes, is that correct?
I
Ray?
expect so to,
We have to take it to the
I think
voters?
to
For a charter
to
change.
the
Yes.
annual meeting, right?
Yeah, before it goes to legislature.
Yeah, we can call a special meeting and hold it on Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
We're not tied into a weekend meeting.
Yep. Okay. Yes.
I agree with Jonathan. I think it would be nice to hear from the community. I think the other issue, of course, is the preparation of the budgets and the work of the manager and the finance staff. In other words, if the town meeting is the first Monday of March, when would be a window of we could get the work done type of thing. I think that's an important consideration.
Yeah, the timeline, that's a lot, it's a lot of work, so there's not a lot of break. If we
But I
change
think
it
at
to
the end of the
April-
day, if we decided to say, try to move it up to April and have it on a Saturday, whether it works or not, I think we just have to say, hey, look, this is what it's gonna be, and hopefully more people come, but it's gonna be a wish and a prayer.
I know, but unless we put in the effort, we're never gonna know.
You're never gonna know.
That's true. So, if we wanted to consider, that we can consider putting in having a special meeting so that the public could ask the public's input about it. How we orchestrate that, I don't know. We're trying to get, enough feedback so we can come up with a cohesive month/day that would work.
Couldn't we just do it in our regular?
At a regular meeting, and we can put it on our next agenda for July and see what we get, but my other concern is that summer months mean not a lot of people who might be concerned would necessarily show up, but we could, take email feedback, that sort of thing, and just have it all at the next meeting.
Well, may
Yes,
I just,
sure.
because I'm wondering if you could move ahead to say that you want the village meeting to be able to set the date of the next meeting. So it might, if it doesn't have to be in the charter that it's a specific month and day, could we amend the charter to say that one village meeting will set the date of the next village meeting, the annual meeting? Because then you could buy yourself some time to figure out exactly what day it would be.
We put it on
and-
the annual meeting as an article.
Well, and also
Okay.
you could adjust it, like if you found that Saturday was good, keep it Saturday, or change it, I don't know.
I don't know
I don't know if
if
that's
that's
possible to have
flexible.
that flexibility in the charter.
Yeah.
Haven't looked at it for tonight, but,
Yeah, sorry, I just thought.
that's all right. I have to think about it. If you can get the legislature to approve of language that says we're not going to establish a date and time and day, except at the annual meeting for the following year, I suspect that I don't know what I'm concerned is they could be concerned that there's not a regularly scheduled monthly time.
Okay,
Right.
Going forward. But
I was just trying to buy us some flexibility.
Yeah, that's a conversation.
So we can
yeah.
continue to,
Yeah, and
we
they-
can find that out. In the meantime, we can ask the residents to please contact us. We could do a Survey Monkey if you want to do that.
Find some way to do that, because if we, say for instance, we change it to a Saturday, what happens to the election of officers and other transactions that have to be on a ballot? We're obviously not gonna have it on Sunday, the polls open on a Sunday, if we have the annual
Right.
meeting on a Saturday. So it'll have to be the following Monday or something of that nature, but yeah, that's.
I think
a little
some have
odd,
the
but
meeting and the voting on the same day. Some towns do that.
Sometimes do that.
The meeting could be 3 hours, two or 3 hours in the morning, the
Yeah.
voting could go till 5 or something.
So, you know, perhaps some ideas for the next meeting that we could start to incorporate. Like I said, the Survey Monkey, the Rockingham Planning Commission has things like that we did for, you know, for survey, and that gave us a lot of input, so.
Now, keep in mind that
Right.
the annual town meeting is set by state law.
Mhm.
And that's in the statute, so
Right.
the town doesn't have any flexibility
I
when they
understand.
have theirs. The village does, because that is not set by the legislature, that is set by the charter.
Right.
So you could decide to have, by voice vote at the Saturday meeting for certain things, or some Australian vote.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, I believe in Saxon's River, do they elect their officers on the floor, don't they?
I don't know.
I think they do. They don't have a separate polling day
You've got more flexibility than towns. Towns are locked in
by state
by
statute.
state statute.
Got it, okay. All right, so I'm gonna move that to the next meeting for some thoughts on how to get information. Moving on to Finance Office, Shannon and Fabiola. Year-to-date financials.
Do you guys want to start with questions? Would that be the easiest thing?
Probably. Did you have some jigs? You do.
Well, I thought I think the budget is, you know, we're gonna have a surplus, which is good in our general fund. I think we've absorbed a couple of unexpected increases, but we've been able to offset those, and we certainly appreciate the efforts of the staff and her direct reporters in that regard. One item which actually means nothing in terms of the dollars, I regret to say that the trustees' budget is over budget for the year, which I know last year I criticized the manager for the manager's budget being over, and I think that we ought to endeavor in the coming year not to do that. So anyway, other than that, I think that you know, we've obviously looked at this on a monthly basis, and I think that you know, hopefully we'll get a few more positive things as we close out the books, and not too many negatives. And I think we've done pretty well on the budgets this year.
Anyone else have any questions for Shannon? Or? Okay, so Shannon, if you had some highlights you wanted to hit.
No, just that all four of the department heads, police, fire, water, and wastewater, all did an extraordinary job this year, coming in under budget for expenses. So,
And I just want to thank Shannon for coming in the middle, or near the end of the year, actually, and just really doing a wonderful job.
Okay.
Now, the overtime report was
Well, that's a
bit-
different
Overtime
subject.
is, yeah.
Okay.
And again, we're,
So if we're ready to move on, we'll move on to the next item, which is the overtime and comp reports. That's a different subject, and And
So
we do have
the-
the notes, so yeah.
Yeah, the bulk of the overtime was in police, and we're short 2.5 officers at the moment, so, and then there were some extenuating circumstances for the month, untimely deaths, couple mental health cases, things like that, where officers can't leave in the middle, or, so there were quite a few of those in this time period.
Any further comment on the overtime or comment reports? Anyone? No? Yes?
I just think it's, you know, obviously, we just look at the numbers, and it's a management issue. It's between, obviously, the police chief and you, Wendy, in terms of how these, you know, vacancy issues, how things are scheduled, when things are scheduled, and it just the bulk of hitting it at the end of the year, you know, it's just doesn't sit well. But again, you know, to try to second guess it is it's not our job. I think it's basically the job of you know, the police chief and the manager. So hopefully, you know, we'll get back on track with this and not have this kind of surprise.
Right. May I just?
Yes.
Just the downside of coming in under budget this year is because it was primarily because we're short police officers. And even though we made 2 really good hires this year, it's difficult to find officers, and we're not the only ones in that position. Hinsdale has 4 filled out of 10 positions, I believe it is, which is horrendous. It's really, really challenging to find good hires, and so we're looking at finding some other ways of advertising. If we do hire folks who haven't been to the academy, that's an additional expense, but that's something that we're looking at.
Mr. Reese?
You guys missed a great opportunity, and also the police department did. At the library, they had stories of hope. People that broke their addictions due to drugs speaking. I've been to several before, and they were looking for somebody, a representative with the police department, to share their stories, how they've turned their lives around and got off of heroin and different drugs. And they said that the community is part of the solution, that policing does not fix the problem of a public health thing. And I personally believe that this police department in the next budget or contract year with the police, I believe you can reduce the policing staff by 3 members. And the reason I say that is, if you want 2 officers on, why can't you have an officer on and ask North Walpole or Walpole to help with assistance? We always assist them during the late night hours. Do you ask the sheriffs for a proposal of a contract before the next negotiation to see if they can offer some type of better deal? But I really believe if you address the underlying issue of addiction like I went, your police department calls, even Ron admitted to me, he says, Paul, I'd love to see this community with 5 police officers someday, but he says, I can't right now. So that's why I have said, see where the graphs are taking us and address the issues. And I believe 1.3 square miles does not need 9 to 10 officers. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mitchell?
I thought when we hired the 10th officer that we were not going to have any overtime.
We didn't hire a 10th officer.
I thought we had.
No, sir, we did not.
Gotten up to. So how many did we actually wind up with now?
We're 9, but we are under staffed at the moment.
2.5 under.
Yeah, we have 8, and our part-time officer will be returning from leave this week or last week.
Okay, on that vein, we have 2 positions that we've given to Bellows Falls police officers, one who's no longer with us, that's Shane Harris, and we also have our chief, first constable, second constable. There's 2 positions that do nothing. town and the village want to collaborate, let's have townwide policing. Let's put 2 police officers that can do townwide policing as far as the town goes, do the speed enforcement. And there's how you pay as you go. With these 2 police officers, they can make a lot of revenue in the town with the speed issues that we have up by exit 6, and I don't need to get into all that. But point is, then you would have backup officers from the town, the constables, the new constables, that can respond into the village if need be. You could also utilize the state police, you could also utilize the sheriff. When you have 2 officers sitting in an untimely death for 6 hours, that's a waste of resources. State police are capable of handling untimely deaths. We don't need to tie up 2 police officers. You know, 1 call on Russell Street, 3 officers on Ranger Street. That was an absolute waste of money and resources. Absolute waste. So when Paul says that we can do it with 5, we can, because we can take 2 and make the town pay their share. Or earn their share and feed back into the community. Then we achieve townwide policing and we have a safer community. I don't like the idea of 1 officer being on patrol, to be honest with you. But if you have a backup officer in Rockingham who can respond, your problem is solved.
Yes.
Just one other comment too. As I've been reading about Hinsdale Police Department, Brattleboro, and how they view things in their chief and the shortages in Winchester, the thing they drove down over and over in Hinsdale, the chief said, investment in your community. Their officers or chief has to be invested and live in the community or they don't get hired. And you can do policing sometimes when a police officer is on the street and actually lives in the community at the playground out of uniform. So years down the road they had that. I think you might want to look at that moving ahead again.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, it looks like we will move on if we have nothing else on the comp and overtime. So the next item on the agenda, which is discussing the village attorney. This item was on the board, was on our agenda, because there have been discussions and comments by board members over the years, not just recently, but over the years, that both town and village could use new blood, or there are conflicts because of the number of clients that an attorney has that are in our community, which may impact us when the board is trying to take action. I believe specifically, John, you wanted this on the agenda and you wanted to speak to it?
So, yeah, I wanted this on the agenda after listening to concerns from residents over the last, about the last year. And I have some concerns with, more with how fundamentally the village does things from the past administrations and how things carry through just from administration to administration. We get complacent in utilizing the same old techniques, the same old methodology, and we keep going down the same road without seeing a lot of change. And I think that we need to have a discussion on what we want, or what we're expecting basically out of this position, how we want it to be, how we want it to be filled by the applicant or the party who's the attorney, and most importantly, what are we getting out of it? What is basically the return on investment? Some of this does come from an issue of conflict of interest on the number of people with having an attorney that lives within the village that represents a majority or a large portion of individuals in the village, and how things such as tax sales and those things go about, and having a conflict of interest there. As well, I think it's at this day and age, I think it's prudent that we think about bringing a village attorney in that's from outside the community. That is, not, and I'm not talking about Brattleboro, is someone that is disassociated with this area, that is independent, and that really has a definitive specialty in municipal government. I think that it's going to be, I'm thinking that this is going to be a conversation we're probably going to have for, several meetings at least. And, I'm really looking forward to what the next several to 5 years is going to look like for what the village's needs are in that service, how we're going to get it met, and how, what we're expecting out of it.
Anyone else have anything on this subject?
Well, I always complain about the expense. Okay, that's my common theme. And, I realize that, clearly, in order to be village attorney, you have to be a lawyer. You have to, unlike, I guess, being a judge, you don't have to be a lawyer, but I think that, certainly there's qualifications that are required. To me, in an ideal world, you attract an attorney that would say, well, this is a special case. I'm going to do a lot of this pro bono or whatever type of thing. I mean, like, we get so richly paid for our work, but we're not as experienced. You don't need to have an MBA to be a trustee. So I think that the issue for me is not the capabilities of the attorney or anything like that. It's basically, can we do it at a better cost? I mean, that to me is the idea. And I would see this like any other type of outside service is, from time to time you do an RFP or something and see what's available out there type of thing. And so that would be my issue.
That's what I figured. Yes.
When he's done, sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, who's next?
I was saying when he was done. No, I
Yes.
completely agree. I think that this is an issue that we should do. Well, first, I think it's an issue that the administration sit down, look at the topics that we are going to be dealing with in the next 3 to 5 years. What are the needs that we're going to have for services, and put together an RFB or an RFP and submit those out and see what interests we do have. We might be able to drag a wide net and get a lot of interest and be able to utilize, a different pathway, or we might not. That might come up short, or it might come up that, we just can't financially, with the needs that we have, we need to look at it at an individual, maybe it's a year-to-year basis, than looking at a long-term, even though I think staying, looking forward and staying with someone for a certain segment of time is really advantageous, so that there is some continuity with what is going on between issues. Because a lot of these legal issues don't fulfill themselves within a year. They take several to carry through.
I'd like to mention, that it is advantageous to have somebody that has the knowledge, that's had the experience, that's fought the fights, and but it's also good to have an open discussion and to see what's out there. But when you're talking about the cost, some of the arguments that we got into specifically, whether it been, or the issues we got into specifically, whether it been the fire department in the past or other items, and I don't mean to speak for the village attorney, and I'm not, but I think sometimes when I've gone over the bills and communication with administration and with management, we haven't been billed for the full freight either. I mean, we've gotten a break compared to what an attorney in the outside world would charge that would just come in here periodically or randomly or whatever. Correct me if I'm wrong. But there's an element of we have a hometown boy who realizes the village is on a budget, has X amount of dollars to spend. I believe he's at times we've been very fortunate because we didn't have a big bill, and so that makes a difference also. But I mean, some of the years that we're talking about, we had issues going on in this department or that department, or with this, whether it been personnel or civilly or otherwise, and there's a cost involved in that, and it's the cost of doing business. We can go out and take a look and see what's out there, but you got to make sure that you pay for what you get and the caliber of the individual that's fighting for you. We've got a proven record here to an extent, and that's a big element.
Gary, did you have any input on that?
No, not at this point in time.
Wendy, did you want to speak to
Well, I
that?
don't know if you want Ray to speak, but I mean,
Yeah.
They're very responsive. Ray might want to mention how he has brought a young attorney on board. They are responsive. I certainly see the value in periodic, every now and then looking around. I see the value in making a list of things that we expect to need services for, particularly union negotiations. One thing, I don't know if you folks are aware of it, but we are taking advantage of a fair amount of the attorney services that are provided through Passive, where we get free, very specialized legal advice on matters that could lead to a loss, which is actually most legal matters. So that's a really nice supplement, and that would apply to any. It doesn't matter who we have for our regular services, but that's a really nice aspect of being with the League of Cities and Passive, is that we get very specialized, or I should say, advice from very specialized attorneys and hand-picked depending on what the issue is.
Yes, Jake?
I want to, my comments are not about Ray.
I understand that.
I mean, Stefan has made it, I guess, about Ray, but I mean, I'm not talking at all about the current attorney and the value that attorney has brought to the job or anything like this. This is not personal. This is about running the village.
And
So
I'm not saying that it was personal, and I wasn't alluding to that.
Well, that's certainly the way it sounded.
Well, unfortunately, what I was basically, I'll just come right out and say it. You have an individual here that we've had an investment with. He has an investment in the community. He knows the players. He knows the ball game. We've had a pretty good track record with this individual. And if you want to change horses, sometimes it might be a good decision. Sure, let's go out there and look at different things. Let's talk about it. But if I was a betting man, if we had a problem that came up, we probably experienced that problem in the past, and this would be the gentleman that I put my money on. I'm not endorsing or anything like that, but what I'm saying is, anything that we've pretty much had to deal with has been on his plate at one time or another for us, and we've had this discussion where I know he's not turned in. I don't believe correctly. If he turns, we get a different hourly wage than is applied somewhere else in his business, and I, for one, on this board, am thankful of that. So,
excuse me. I don't want to stop you.
Nope, that's fine.
Mr.
Yeah,
Reese.
no, I actually would endorse our staying with our local attorney, because you got a walking encyclopedia. It has been here his whole life, knows this town inside and out, every law, and I actually believe he saves you money because he already knows the history, and he's a taxpayer that's paid dearly over the years too. So I would actually stay with what you got.
Okay, so I would like to ask what the board's pleasure is, and I'll speak to Mr. Mitchell in a second. What is the board's pleasure? Do we want to go out for an RFP?
I would like to make a motion that we empower the village manager to make a plan for what we're going to be looking at over the next, say, 1 to 3, 3 to 5 years, and put together a packet to put out for RFB or RFP, however she wishes to submit, whether it's looking for a proposal or a bid for services. I think a proposal is actually more appropriate for this matter.
Or RFQ even.
RFQ,
Yeah.
Request for qualification.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And, you know, this is an open opportunity for anyone.
Okay, so the last bit
qualified.
was your motion, right?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay, so is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, for discussion, all right, and so you want to finish with
Oh.
your thought?
I mean, this is open for everyone. This is not, I mean, my reasoning for going down this road is looking forward. Having the best intent for what our services need to be down the road. And like I said, this is an open opportunity. This is nothing to do with our current village attorney, and is more than welcome to submit with everyone else. But unless we look around, how do we know what other services and how much the costing of those services are? You know, it's very difficult to know when we've been with a certain attorney for so long and we haven't even looked around to look at these things. You know, I completely understand what Mr. Golick has been saying, you know, about the advantages of what we have now, but then again, we also don't know what else is out there since we haven't looked.
Mr. Mitchell, you have a comment?
I would tend to agree with Jonathan. I do believe that there have been conflicts of interest. We just watched a slideshow and we saw the Chemco building, whatever they're calling it this week, up there. And yet, our village attorney telling the owner of that building, don't answer any certified mail. That's a conflict of interest. Okay.
I don't know that you know that. None of us know that.
Well, I read it in the paper. Does the paper lie?
Yeah.
They don't get everything right.
Yes, they do.
Fake
Yeah.
news.
Fake
Fake
news?
news.
Yeah,
No.
don't believe everything you read.
Yeah.
Okay,
Jen,
yes,
I'd
right.
like to address just that one issue.
Hmm?
I've had no involvement on behalf of either the village, the town, or Liberty Mill, or Steve McAllister in that one particular matter. Steve knows I'm conflicted out. He was his own counsel. I referred the village to Steve Ancuda on that when it first came up. That is the only conflict that I can think of in at least 20 or 25 years. I can think of one other that came up
Me
many,
too.
many years ago. That's the only conflict. that I'm
Right.
aware
There's
of
no
that's ever come up.
conflict.
No.
I don't think there's any conflict.
Well, I mean, you have a number of
There is no
clients,
conflict. There is-
so
I'm not
that
asking, I'm
was part
stating,
of
there is no
No.
conflict.
Well,
No.
I don't represent either party.
Okay, we understand
At
that.
all.
We do. Is there any further discussion before we move on go on the motion? No. All right, so, having the motion in mind, all those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Okay, it's 3-2, therefore the motion carries. We will go forward and see what there is to see. Thank you, everyone. Review fire department and police department call logs. Again, it says first meeting of the month, but right now we're only having one meeting a month, so that's it. All right. Any comments on the call logs? Anyone? No. Thank you, Ray. Does anyone have anything on these? Have they had a chance to review them? All right. Hearing nothing. Move on to the review the task list, board goals, manager goals, first meeting of this month. You have the task list before you. We have, I have not, did not go over them extensively to see if we have a lot of comments on them, so some of them we are moving along. I'd like to see so we have a housing strategy. I see the housing strategy 2019. I'd like to see that move forward, I guess. The landlord tenant group, if there is such a thing. you know, if you have anything, I know there's
Yeah.
lots of things to do, but any time now we'll be looking at budgets again, so.
Well, the landlord-tenant group, a logical way to start that is with discussion of the nuisance ordinance.
Nuisance ordinance, yeah. I mean, that's kind of sort of how Springfield started theirs. They had a group, we had discussion between landlords and tenants and concerned citizens
Yeah.
came in.
Yeah.
You know, see what they could form after that. So I'll just make a note about the nuisance ordinance here. Okay, so it talks about the nuisance ordinance, the streets and sidewalks, it says complete, so it's waiting for your review, the attorney's review, before it comes to the trustees.
Right, and there's several ordinances that are in various stages
Stages,
of
yeah, we're
change, so
working
I
on
need to, or staff needs to just make a good list so we know where
Yeah.
everything is, so we keep them moving.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd really like someday,
Thank you.
if you talk about what we can do, codification is, if you're familiar with that, we don't do it. It's a process where when you adopt a new ordinance, you look at all your existing ordinances and make sure they don't conflict. It's really important. We just basically file, we just put each ordinance, you know.
It would really be good if they were digitized, that way you could actually search and we could find what the conflicts are
Right.
much more easily.
Right, but it's a legal activity and it's something that you need to pay people for, but it's valuable. So maybe there's a way to do it less expensively, but it is really valuable because then you know what you have and you know that what, you know, the new stuff doesn't conflict with the old stuff, and it's just a lot easier to administer and enforce.
In your spare time, you want to look into that and see if you
It's
can
on
find
my
a less
list,
expensive
but
way to
we'll
do
see.
it.
I just want to mention it as a good thing and just,
Yes.
okay.
Oh, clearly, because we do know we have some of those things going on. And the ordinance committee right now is working on the offenses against persons and property and looking at a possibility of the draft proposal for the nuisance ordinance. We realize the persons and property ordinance is, really, it's a mishmash of things that are thrown together. And one of the goals for us we're working on is separating the ones that are for persons and ones for property. And so we can look at what will wind up if the nuisance ordinance passes, to put into there and then still have an ordinance that runs for what's left.
Right.
So, that sort of thing. Any comment on any of our goals we have here? Some of them are long-term. The personnel rules, are we still on schedule for summer?
Yes. The new executive assistant is going to head that process.
Okay. Is that also the HR person, out of curiosity?
HR is being handled by the finance director and the executive assistant.
Okay, so it's a shared position at this point. Okay.
Yeah, it's not exactly Shannon supervising it. She's the official HR
Okay.
director, but the executive assistant also has HR authority,
Oh.
essentially.
Jakes, did you have something? You were looking in this direction.
Well, I'd
Ready
love
to
to
move
be on
forward?
that committee.
Which one? Oh, the person,
The
yes.
personnel.
Right, we haven't heard, we need feedback, so when they would like to start, I do understand that.
Okay.
Yes, I do.
Just wanted to put my,
You want to remind me, yeah, I do know that. Review agenda items for the next regular trustees meeting, which is July 9.
I will not be here for that one.
Okay. I do realize that we're going to look at the RFQ will be maybe out by then, well, most likely out by then.
I'm sorry, the RFQ for
the
attorney?
Attorney services that we were just talked about. In a month, you think they'll,
well,
might be out?
it's kind of
or
in a
ready to
month,
go
but it's
out?
kind of not, just because it's 3 weeks and
Yeah,
I
I
have
get it.
some other
Okay.
plans, so it may be.
Maybe,
It may
okay.
be, especially if there's something that somebody else has already done that would work.
And then what was the other one?
Well, the most important one is the tax rate.
Right. The tax rate, that's right, for sure, that has to be on there because the 11th, you said.
Because the bills have to
Mailing
be
date,
out
yep.
2 days later, no room for
Is that
error.
you mentioned
the annual meeting date
Discussion.
process, that
Right.
discussion, that'll be on there too, yep.
Yeah,
That'll be
but
all at this point.
can I just stress that if anyone else is going to not be there, that you let us know so we make sure we have a quorum, because we must adopt the tax rate that night.
That night, on
There's
July 9th.
no room for
For sure.
for,
if- yeah.
or excess. There's no cushion.
Well, Jake's,
So if you want
you're going
to
on vacation,
receive
we can always have you
tax-
call.
I don't go on vacation.
Oh.
I don't go on vacation. I'm retired, so. the,
Yeah. Okay.
But that is July
9.
He's looking.
9th.
So
No,
we can do it earlier.
I'm definitely planning to be here.
Okay,
Okay.
good. All right, so that should, at this point, only mean one person would be absent.
Yes, I'll be on vacation.
Okay. He works, he's on vacation.
He's
not
on
retired yet.
vacation, see?
Yeah. Okay, reviewing agenda items for the next joint board meeting, June 30th.
Yeah, it should actually say July 30th.
Yeah, you're right. That's wrong. Okay. July 30th. Right.
Possibly the bridge.
Oh, the decision about.
I think there should
But I
be
think
something,
there
some
are other
discussion about
things.
the bridge.
I'm sure there will be. The
Depot Street Bridge, right.
The select board may have made the decision prior to that. I
okay.
doubt it, but they may have.
All right.
Okay. Okay.
Stefan, I don't know if you remember that. I know we had some other things. It's just, they're slipping my
I
mind right
don't.
now.
No, I don't.
Okay.
Let's see, we do have a little time, thank goodness. Approve orders, bills, and warrants.
So approve?
Second, I need?
Second.
3 of them. Okay, you get to pick one, Kathleen. All right. And all those in favor of approving?
Aye.
Signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Nope. All right, those are passed. Other business, so start, John.
I would just like to thank the volunteer firefighters that came out for the Recycled Percussions event and helped with the mass flow of people that was going on in there. It was really, I think it was a really great event. I enjoyed it. There was a lot of families. It was outstanding, and it would not have gone as smoothly if it wasn't for the amount of volunteers that came out and really made sure that it went like clockwork and that we weren't going to have any problems. So I'd just like to thank all the fire departments. That's the Bellows Falls Village, Rockingham Volunteer, Saxon River Volunteer, and Westminster Volunteer departments. So thank you very much for that, gentlemen. And ladies, actually, I'm sorry, there was many female volunteer there as well.
Thank you for putting it in the 21st century. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
Trying.
Step.
Still an 18th century man.
You all set? Okay. Jake's?
Yeah, 2 items. I went to the wastewater open house last week and was very impressed with the sewer operation. It's really a high-tech
very nice,
operation
yeah.
now. And I know the flip side is the rates that we're paying, but I really think we have as up-to-date operation as anyone, and was very impressed with that. The other item is I attended the Springfield Hospital presentation
At the
last
library.
Tuesday at the library. The acting or the interim acting chief executive of the hospital and also the chief executive of the clinics, the ancillary services were there. They very forthcoming, very transparent, if I could use that word. It was well attended, I thought, for here at Bellows Falls, and rightfully so, because it brought home to me the importance of that walk-in facility to this community. I don't mean just Bellows Falls, I mean Rockingham. If we didn't have that facility, our population, our citizenry here would be in dire straits. I think the good news that I got from the session was that the Bellows Falls facility is a good operation. They didn't use the word profitability or whatever, but I think it's a facility that's being utilized. The census is growing in terms of the number of people using it, and that's all good because clearly it's in our best interest for the Springfield Hospital organization to survive. and keep our facility well and strong. So anyway, it was a good session.
Thank you. I'm glad you got a chance to attend it. Gary?
Other than the fire department's attending, I'd also like to thank Golden Cross and the Wyndham County Sheriffs for also being there.
Good. There was an item that's been brought to my attention that has to do with the Headington Park. It is that the trash facilities that are there for dog maintenance and so on and so forth are being utilized by neighbors in the area, even so much as being observed throwing bags of trash into a newly emptied receptacle. That's a concern. We also noticed that a number of businesses that we have in our community have removed their trash receptacles because they get the same sort of thing. It's a concern because animals get into the bags, skunks, whatever we have in our, being close to the river. And that means the highway department, I believe, who does the cleanup of that, which just makes for more mess and more cost as far as wages are concerned. How we can tackle that, it's also unsightly for a beautiful park that is in some ways underutilized. I would like to see if there's something we can do about that. But someone brought it up to me and who lives near there and who observes it all the time, so.
May I just,
Yes,
if the
please.
goal is to make, I would just suggest that the goal should be to make property owners responsible for solid waste, for having solid waste provision to their property. And if you want to set that as a goal, that could probably be in the nuisance ordinance.
Okay.
Just the basic fact or philosophy that if you own a piece of property, you're responsible for the garbage that is generated by that property.
For instance, apartments and so on and so forth.
And then we figure out the details.
Isn't that now?
I don't know if it's set that way, but if you think it should be that way, then that provides guidance, and then we figure out how to get it done. There's lots of different ways you can do it.
And once again, this is an issue that you could call the police department if you witness this sort of thing, but you'd have to be able to sign a complaint if you know who it is in order to prevent it from continuing to happen, which apparently is happening weekly.
This is an issue there. We've discussed this.
Yeah.
I mean, every year in the summertime, well, not just the summertime, this has been
Yeah,
discussed
all the
about
time.
at least once a year. Could we possibly even look at replacing those two receptacles with ones that don't allow it? That
But
have
then
smaller
people
passage?
just dump stuff on
But
the
then it's
side.
They don't have a hole in
Grass.
the top because they're recycled. What people are doing is they're,
Household trash.
I've gone through it and we've had to
Yeah.
do the stuff
Yeah.
and we find bills. I mean, they're taking their household garbage instead of putting it out for the garbage man
Right.
and throwing it in there.
Mhm.
If we're able to lock down the tops, so there's a decent sized hole for bottles, cans, whatever to go in.
Oh, these
that
type,
may-
yeah.
Yes. If we
You know what
restrict
I'm
the
saying? That
size
may
of going
be
through, they're not gonna be putting
Yeah.
trash bags in
a
it.
way to fix some of the problem.
There are people
Right.
who probably
They-
don't want to pay for recycling. If a small bag of trash is $1.25 and they don't want to do it, they wind up putting it in that.
Or they might just put the bag next to the can. So,
In which case, that would be a littering offense.
right,
And then you open it up and see whose address is in
It
there,
is.
if there's an address in there.
right.
So that's something that can be done. So it would be preferable if people would take care of their own recycles or their own household trash and be responsible for it.
Ideally, it would, I agree that we should do something to make it the property owner's responsibility. I thought it was a state law.
There's
Oh.
criteria for that.
I
yeah.
thought it was a state law about, under housing law that you, have to provide, I think for a
X
two-bedroom unit.
Disposal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was saying, two-bedroom unit, you have to have at least one off-street parking spot
Mhm.
under state statutes, as well as, I think you're required for exterior maintenance, snow removal, and garbage.
And recycling. Recycling is
Yes.
actually a requirement
As
of
well.
landlords.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it probably
So-
is in state law for landlords, but then you have commercial properties that are a little different, and then you have single-family homes. So, if you're comfortable just with the idea that property owners should be responsible, that's part of the puzzle, but then we'll also have visitors,
Mhm.
which wouldn't fall under that, so we'll
Of
look
course.
at it.
Yeah. But yes, there's definitely some angles in which we could address the issue, from changing the size of the receptacle to addressing the individual participants who are tossing their home trash into it, and also calling the police if you see that. See something, say something. then perhaps they could ask them to curb their behavior.
We have people who are burning trash.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's a lot of ways people are getting rid of garbage
We
that
don't
they
do
shouldn't be.
we don't do burns in BF, are we?
We're
We
not
don't-
supposed to.
No, that's my understanding. So
Yeah.
there shouldn't be any burning of trash.
If you see it, call somebody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like we're down to our 2 executive sessions at this point. And
I'll
we need a
make a
motion
motion.
for the first one.
I'll make a motion. I move to find that premature general public knowledge will place the municipality at a substantial disadvantage. I move to go into executive session for that.
I'll second that.
All right.
You ready?
And it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
None
And
opposed?
second, I move that the board enter executive session to discuss a grievance in connection with Section 1, I'm sorry, Section 3 VSA 926.
Okay, need a second for that?
And invite
And invite, oh, sorry,
the
excuse me.
manager and the finance director, please.
Manager and finance
Are
director.
we also
And
inviting
the
the
parties.
the grievance?
Yeah.
And- okay.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Okay, we are now in executive session. Thank you.